Hello and welcome to Penalty on the Podcaster. I just want to talk, where I just talk about things relating to the NFL that I want to talk about. In this episode, I will be covering the Trey Lance disaster. As you might have heard, Trey Lance was traded yesterday to the Dallas Cowboys for a fourth-round pick, and so I will be covering that today. Before we get into the content, a few quick messages. Number one, please share this podcast with your friends. It's really one of the most simple and best things you could do to help this podcast. And I'm getting really close to 1,000 downloads all time. And so just spread the word. Really, it would help a lot, and I'd appreciate it. Also, this podcast is not currently sponsored. If you'd like to sponsor this podcast or contact me for whatever reason, my email is in the description. This podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, RSS Community, and Google Podcasts. The links to this podcast on all of those platforms will be in the description. Now, without further ado, let's get into the content. So, yes, Trey Lance has been traded after 4 interesting games, including a horrible loss to the Bears. And I think that was really a telltale sign that there was a problem, because how is it possible to be in charge of a team like the 49ers and lose to the Bears, the worst team in the NFL? Not only that, but that one loss could have meant the difference between the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed. So that was a big deal. And, of course, he would get injured and sit out the season, and then Brock Purdy would do really well. And I just want to highlight how bad the drafting of him was. The 49ers gave up 3 first-rounders and a second-rounder. 3 firsts and a third to move up 9 spots from number 12 to number 3 to select this guy. Trey Lance was pretty much the only guy available to them at both spots who was actually a bust, which is incredible that they missed. Here's who they could have had at the number 3 pick. They could have had Kyle Pitts to help complement George Kittle. They could have had Jamar Chase, who would have been a beast playing with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Same thing for Jalen Waddle, who they could have had at number 6. They could have had Penei Sewell, who could have played opposite Trent Williams and ensured there would be 0 sacks on the season. J.C. Horn and Pat Surtain are both incredible corners and would greatly help the 49ers' already amazing pass defense. Devontae Smith, same as with Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase. Justin Fields, hey, a quarterback. That's exactly what they needed, and this was a good quarterback. Micah Parsons, who would have led the 49ers to a Super Bowl probably if he had played opposite Nick Bosa. That would be the worst pass rush duo to face in the NFL. Rashawn Slater, another great offensive tackle who would have been the perfect complement to Trent Williams. They missed out on a great quarterback in Mac Jones as well. They missed out on Zaven Collins. And they also missed out on Kadarius Toney, who on the Chiefs has been pretty good. They missed out on Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. They missed out on Rashad Bateman. And not all of these are the biggest stars, but they're better than Trey Lance. And the quarterbacks they could have gotten if they were at number 3 that were actually good, Justin Fields and Mac Jones, would have been incredible. And then if they had stayed at number 12, who was selected with the number 12 pick? Micah Parsons, who would have, there would be a sack every play if Jay Greenlaw and Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa and Armstead were on that defense, there would be a sack every single play. And they still could have gotten Rashawn Slater, and they still could have gotten Mac Jones if they had stayed at number 12. And all this. And I'm really glad they didn't get any of these players because they missed out on these players. The Rams were able to beat the 49ers in an NFC championship and win the Super Bowl. And as a Rams fan, that makes me incredibly happy. But this is like, and I hear a lot of people defending their front office, the 49ers front office, like, well, they didn't set them back too bad. I mean, they still made 2 NFC championships. And it's like, yes, they didn't, like, get hurt by this, but they missed out. Like, they would have won at least one of those NFC championships and probably won the Super Bowl if they could have had Mac Jones or Justin Fields or Micah Parsons on that defense. Or, well, Mac Jones and Justin Fields would be on the offense. Like, if they had any of those players on their team, they likely would have actually won an NFC championship. And so, while it's not that big of a setback, they missed out on an opportunity to actually win a championship. Especially, I think the best pick for them would be Micah Parsons. Of course, that wasn't the best pick at the time before they had Brock Purdy, but Micah Parsons would have been the best pick because that defense would be completely unstoppable. But now the Cowboys got him. And they picked pretty much the only bust that was available at their position. And so it was an absolute disaster for them. So they weren't harmed, but they didn't get the benefit that would have led them to not being 2 years away from a 30-year Super Bowl drought. Just hold out 2 more years, then I can boast about it, that the 49ers miss to have not won a Super Bowl in 30 years. Yeah. But in all seriousness, like, this is a great pick for the Cowboys now because for a 4th rounder, they get someone who could eventually be a backup, I guess, but they also get someone to motivate their quarterback, Dak Prescott, so that he's good, knowing that he could easily be replaced with Trey Lance. And really, it could be a driving factor in contract negotiations with Dak Prescott. And if they want to move away from Dak Prescott, then they could more easily do that if they had Trey Lance. And even if none of this works out, and Trey Lance really is that bad, what do they lose? They lose a 4th round pick. But the 49ers now, what did they lose? Oh boy, they lost 3 firsts, a 3rd, and the opportunity to draft players who would almost undoubtedly have taken them to a Super Bowl victory by now. I mean, imagine the top 2 contenders for Defensive Player of the Year in 2022 were the 49ers, Nick Bosa, and the Cowboys, Micah Parsons, who they passed on to get Trey Lance. What pick was Parsons selected with? Number 12 overall. The same pick that was given to the Dolphins. And the Dolphins also won that trade because they turned those picks into Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb. It's just amazing to me what the Dolphins were able to do with those picks. And that was, like, imagine if the 49ers had kept those picks and they had gotten Tyreek Hill or they'd gotten Micah Parsons. If they kept those picks, they could have gotten Micah Parsons and Tyreek Hill. Isn't that amazing? And so the Cowboys lost the trade up for Trey Lance. They selected who has turned out to be a bust. And you can actually listen to the episode I did on Trey Lance. It's called Trey Lance is Overrated. I think it's good. It's one of my most downloaded episodes, so you should probably listen to it. It's somewhere down there. But still, the 49ers just mismanaged this situation entirely. And in the end, they had to cut their losses by getting rid of Trey Lance. And I guess it's better for Trey Lance to not be behind Sam Darnold. But we don't know if he's going, what position he's going to play. Maybe the Cowboys have another backup that they would put in front of Trey Lance. So his career doesn't seem to be on a good path right now. But it really keeps driving me crazy. How many people are like, well, it didn't hurt the 49ers necessarily that they gave up all these picks. They're doing just fine. They made 2 NFC championships. I'm always like, yeah, but what could have been? If they had gotten Mac Jones or Micah Parsons, this team would probably have won a Super Bowl. So it's not that they're getting hurt and losing and being really bad because they don't have the picks to build a team. It's just they could have kept their picks and selected a player that would have put them in a Super Bowl. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. Feel free to tell me, or anyone else, your thoughts about it. That's really all I have to say about this. Just remember that if you would like to sponsor this podcast or contact me for whatever reason, my email is in the description. This podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, RSS Community, and Google Podcasts. The links to this podcast on all of those platforms will be in the description. And if you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Help the channel grow. It costs nothing. Takes about a second. And you can always undo it if you change your mind later. And also, I am trying to get to 1,000 downloads by the end of the year. So if you enjoyed this, please tell a friend about it and help this channel grow by spreading the word of mouth. It's one of the easiest and most helpful things you can do for this podcast. Anyway, thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this installment of Penalty on the Podcast, or I Just Want to Talk. You'll hear more of me next episode.